Most men spend years trying to figure out why some guys seem to become naturally more attractive over time. And the truth is, 9 reasons older men do better in dating. Psychology Explains goes way beyond looks, money, or smooth pickup lines. There's something happening in the mindset, energy, and behavior of older men that most people can't really explain. And once a man understands this, everything changes. The way he talks, reacts, attracts, and even the way women respect him starts to feel different. 9 reasons older men do better in dating. Psychology Explains isn't just about dating. It's about how some men become emotionally magnetic without constantly chasing attention. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now, because this type of content can literally change the way a lot of men see relationships and themselves. And make sure to help us hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Be part of it with us. Topic 1. Older men stop chasing validation. There's a silent shift that happens to a lot of men after their mid-30s or 40s. They stop chasing approval all the time, and that completely changes the way women see them. Younger men often walk into conversations trying to impress, prove themselves, show how funny, smart, or desirable they are. Older men usually walk in calmer, without that hidden emotional hunger behind every word. And ironically, it's exactly that lack of neediness that creates almost instant attraction. The truth is, women can tell when a man is looking for validation, even if he tries to hide it. You can see it in how fast he replies, how much he over-explains himself, how scared he is to disagree, and how hard he tries to please everyone. A more experienced man learns that saying no, standing by his opinions, and not panicking over female attention shows way more confidence than trying to look perfect. It's like that guy who doesn't need to post motivational quotes every single day to seem confident, because his confidence already shows through his behavior. And that completely changes the game. A lot of men only realize this after failed relationships, rejection, or even painful divorces. They start understanding that attraction doesn't come from constantly trying to be chosen. It comes from being able to stay true to yourself even when you risk losing someone. A simple example of this happens on dates. While younger guys try to fill every second of silence, older men are usually comfortable with it. And that detail seems small, until you realize that comfortable silence usually reveals a level of emotional control that very few men actually have. And that's exactly where the next point starts getting interesting. Topic 2. Emotional control is more attractive than looks. There's a reason why some men walk into a room and naturally grab attention without being the best-looking guy there. It's not height, it's not money, and most of the time it's not even physical appearance. It's emotional control. Most men spend years trying to improve their body, clothes, or status, while completely ignoring the one skill that screams masculine security the loudest: staying calm under pressure. And older men, after getting hit by life enough times, usually develop this without even realizing it. When a man reacts impulsively to everything, he gives off instability. One ignored text ruins his mood. One small criticism destroys his confidence. A delayed date suddenly turns into paranoia. But women notice those reactions quietly. An emotionally controlled man doesn't lose his mind over small things because he understands that not everything is a threat to his ego. And weirdly enough, that calmness creates a feeling of emotional safety that's way stronger than any rehearsed flirting line. There's a very common situation that explains this perfectly. 2 men are interested in the same woman. One of them keeps trying to impress her, talks too much, forces his presence, and clearly gets affected when she takes too long to text back. The other guy keeps living his life normally, staying focused, calm, and grounded, without trying to control everything. And in the end, it's almost always the second guy who feels more magnetic. Because emotional stability creates something rare nowadays: masculine consistency without emotional desperation. And once a man understands that, he starts noticing something even deeper about female behavior. Topic 3. They understand female psychology better. One of the biggest differences between older men and younger men in dating is simple: emotional experience. After years of dealing with relationships, rejection, emotional games, and different personalities. Many men start noticing patterns they used to miss completely. They realize that not every woman says exactly what she feels, and more importantly, they understand that behavior almost always reveals more than words do. That alone changes the way they react in situations that used to make them anxious or confused. Younger men tend to take everything literally. If she takes too long to reply, they panic. If she seems cold one day, they assume she completely lost interest. But experienced men learn that women's emotions fluctuate way more based on emotional context than most men realize. They understand subtle tests, shifts in behavior, and moments of emotional distance without turning everything into a personal crisis. And that creates a massive advantage. They stop reacting emotionally to every little thing. An older man usually notices when a woman is testing his confidence without even realizing she's doing it. Sometimes she teases him, disagrees with him, takes longer to reply, or creates little moments of tension just to see how he reacts emotionally. An inexperienced man tries to convince her, please her, or regain control of the situation. A mature man stays calm, almost like someone who's already seen that movie before. And the interesting part is that this ability doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from experience. Because after a certain age, many men realize that attraction isn't just about what you do. It's mostly about what you don't do under pressure. And that starts becoming even more obvious when mystery enters the picture. Topic 4. Older men know how to create mystery. There's one mistake that kills attraction faster than most men realize: revealing too much too soon. Younger men often believe connection means telling a woman every detail about their lives right away. They send long texts, explain their emotions too fast, and stay available 24/7 thinking that proves genuine interest. But the human brain doesn't work like that. What becomes fully predictable loses intensity very quickly. And older men learn this after years of watching how people actually behave in relationships. Mystery doesn't mean manipulation, acting cold, or playing emotional games. It simply means understanding the value of your presence. A mature man doesn't feel the need to fill every silence, reply instantly, or reveal every future plan on the first date. He understands that emotional connection happens in layers. Think about watching a really good TV series. Part of the excitement comes from being curious about the next episode. Dating works almost the same way. When everything becomes available too fast, emotional tension disappears. A lot of older men also learn something powerful about silence. While insecure men constantly try to control how a woman sees them, mature men are comfortable being partially unknown. They know how to leave conversations without looking desperate to keep them going, how to have a life outside the relationship, and how to leave space for a woman to naturally think about them. And ironically, attraction usually grows strongest in that space. Because when a man stops trying to control every impression he makes, he starts projecting a confidence that doesn't need to be announced. And that becomes even more obvious once financial stability enters the equation. Topic 5. Financial stability changes male energy. There's a huge difference between a man who's trying to survive financially and a man who feels in control of his life. And interestingly enough, that difference shows up before money is ever mentioned. It's not about expensive cars, luxury watches, or showing off online. It's energy. A financially stable man usually walks differently, talks differently, and makes decisions with way less anxiety. Because when the mind isn't constantly stuck in survival mode, masculine presence changes completely. A lot of younger men believe women are only attracted to money itself. But in reality, what often creates attraction is what financial stability represents psychologically: discipline, competence, long-term thinking, and the ability to handle pressure. Imagine two men sitting in the same restaurant. One is clearly nervous, trying hard to look important. The other one simply looks comfortable in his own skin without needing to impress anyone. And almost every time, that quiet calmness communicates more value than any exaggerated display of status ever could. The interesting part is that older men eventually realize money alone doesn't fix emotional insecurity. Many of them already went through the phase of believing financial success would automatically bring validation, female attention, and constant happiness. But over time, they realize the real advantage of financial stability isn't buying attraction. It's removing desperation. It's being able to choose calmly, walk away from bad situations without fear, and stop accepting emotional breadcrumbs just because you feel lost in life. And once a man loses the fear of losing, he starts reacting completely differently when a woman pulls away emotionally. Topic 6. They don't panic when women pull away. One of the biggest emotional advantages older men have in dating is simple. They've already learned that emotional distance doesn't always mean loss. Younger men usually go into panic mode the second they notice a woman becoming colder, quieter, or more distant. They try to fix everything immediately, send more texts, pressure her for answers, and end up destroying their own position without realizing it. More experienced men learn an uncomfortable truth. The more you try to emotionally control someone, the more you push them away. There's almost a natural masculine instinct to fix situations when something feels wrong. But in dating, anxiety rarely creates attraction. In fact, it does the opposite. When a man panics because a woman pulled away a little, he projects fear of abandonment, and fear of abandonment completely weakens masculine confidence. Older men understand that emotionally healthy people sometimes need space, distraction, time, or are simply dealing with their own internal struggles. Not everything revolves around him, and that emotional maturity completely changes the way he reacts. An experienced man usually keeps living his life when he notices emotional distance. He keeps training, working, going out, staying on his routine, and protecting his emotional dignity. Not because he's pretending not to care, but because he understands his life can't stop every time someone changes moods for a few days. And ironically, that attitude often increases respect and attraction, because emotional calmness during uncertainty is incredibly rare nowadays. And once a man develops that stability, something else naturally starts happening. His conversations stop feeling like desperate interviews and start feeling like memorable experiences. Topic 7. Experience makes them better. Conversationalists, there's a huge difference between a man who memorized pickup lines and a man who has actually lived life. Older men usually carry stories, scars, experiences, and lessons that naturally make their conversations more interesting. They don't need to turn every interaction into a desperate attempt to impress someone. And that changes everything. Because at the end of the day, memorable people usually aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who make you feel something while they talk. A lot of younger men go into conversations focused only on the outcome. How do I make her like me? What should I text back? How do I sound more attractive? But that internal pressure makes conversations feel forced. Experienced men usually talk without that constant obsession for validation. They tell stories calmly, ask better questions, and know how to listen without looking like they're just waiting for their turn to speak. And honestly, truly listening has become so rare nowadays that this alone already separates a man from most people. An older man can turn even simple situations into engaging conversations because he learned how to observe life. He talks about trips, failures, businesses that didn't work out, people he met, difficult phases he overcame, and lessons no short-form internet video could ever teach. And those experiences create emotional depth. Think about that man who can hold everyone's attention at a dinner table without being the tallest, richest, or best-looking guy there. Usually, what captivates people isn't appearance, it's presence. And once a man develops that presence, another trait becomes impossible to ignore: purpose. Topic 8. Older men usually have a stronger sense of purpose. There's something extremely powerful about a man who knows where his life is going. And no, that doesn't mean having everything figured out, millions in the bank, or a perfect life. It means direction. Older men usually move past the phase of living only for fun, validation, or social approval. Many of them have built goals, routines, businesses, responsibilities, and a personal mission that takes up real space in their minds. And when a man has purpose, he naturally stops making women the absolute center of his existence. That creates a completely different dynamic in relationships. A man without purpose often becomes emotionally over-available, almost waiting for a woman to give meaning to his life. A man focused on self-growth projects a completely different energy. He enjoys female company, but his identity doesn't depend on it. Think about someone training hard, building a career, learning new skills, or creating something meaningful. There's a quiet presence in men who are focused on something bigger than simply being desired. And women notice that very quickly. Interestingly, purpose also protects a man emotionally. Because when all his happiness depends on female attention, any emotional distance feels like a psychological disaster. But when he has a mission, a routine, and personal growth, life keeps moving even during hard moments. Many older men learned this after painful breakups or lonely phases in life. They discovered that building their own life first creates a rare kind of emotional confidence. And maybe that's exactly why so many of them eventually realize something that completely changes how they see attraction. It's almost never just physical. Topic 9. They've learned that attraction is psychological. Maybe one of the biggest discoveries many men make with age is this. Attraction rarely works the way they thought it did when they were younger. For years, many believe everything revolves around looks, money, or saying the right things. But after enough life experience, they start realizing something much deeper. Women usually don't connect only with what a man has. They connect mostly with how they feel around him. And that completely changes the game. A man can be good-looking and still project insecurity, neediness, and emotional instability. At the same time, another man may not have perfect looks, but can create calmness, emotional tension, confidence, and a feeling of psychological safety. And in real life, those emotions often matter way more. Older men learn to notice this because they've seen seemingly illogical situations happen over and over again. They've seen women lose interest in men who looked perfect on paper, and fall deeply for men who simply knew how to make them feel emotionally alive. At the end of the day, many mature men realize attraction isn't about convincing someone to like them. It's about building such a strong presence that connection happens naturally. They stop chasing tricks, rehearsed lines, and constant validation because they realize emotional energy matters more than performance. And maybe that's exactly what so many younger men still don't understand. Women rarely remember only what a man said, but they almost always remember how they felt in his presence. Conclusion. At the end of the day, maybe the biggest advantage older men have in dating isn't age, it's awareness. Awareness about themselves, emotions, human behavior, and most importantly, their own value. Because the more a man stops living for approval, the stronger his presence becomes. So here's the question. Which one of these traits do you feel you still need to develop in your own life? Emotional control, purpose, confidence, or maybe the ability to stop chasing all the time? Drop a comment below and let us know which point hit you the hardest, because that says a lot about the stage of life you're currently in. And if you want to keep learning about male psychology, relationships, attraction, and self-development in a deep but practical way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're getting closer to our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and you can be part of the group of men leveling up together, instead of staying stuck making the same mistakes most people make today.